Welcome to Gruesome, your horrific true crime podcast. I'm Connie, along with my Galentine for life, Meg. Today, she is going to tell us all about Dayton Leroy Rogers, right?
Yes, the
We had,
Molalla Forest Killer.
and if you are listening to our podcast and you're thinking, I would like to do that, don't forget, we are a Zencaster sponsored podcast. Please go to zencastr.com/pricing. Enter code gruesome with a capital G, get 30% off your first 3 months, and then send us your podcast so we can listen to it as well.
Yeah, be our podcast buds. It'll be the best. I was debating whether or not I should tell the story before or after, but I think I'm going to tell it after and just like dive right in because I think it'll be funnier if I tell it after. But heads up on the trigger warning tonight. Big heads up. Also, happy Galentine's Day too. Sorry.
Yeah.
That
I
was
was
really
like,
cute.
excuse me, I called you my Galentine and I'm getting nothing in return. So
No, happy Galentine's Day. I love Parks and Rec. It's one of my favorites. It's like a top 3 favorite show. And Amy Poehler is like, I love her. I
you
love
guys are
her.
very similar.
I read her book like 4 times. I also read Tina Fey's book, but I like Amy Poehler more. I just think she's funnier.
If you
I'm
guys
not
ever
saying the other one isn't funny. I just prefer one to the other.
if you think to yourself, I wonder what Connie and Meg would be like in an office setting. She would be Leslie Knope and I would be April for sure.
I would be Leslie Knope. I am way too I'll do that. Yeah, no problem. I'll pick it up. No problem.
Mhm.
Let's
I'm
do
just like, no.
it. That's not happening. I always think of the episode, the Halloween episode with Andy and April, and she's like, "People will be murdered," and he goes, "By fun."
Yeah.
It's kind of like that too. That's our relationship.
It is very much our relationship.
Okay. So now I will, now that I have recognized your Galentine, I will raise you a trigger warning for this
Yes.
evening. So we are going to be talking about rape and sex crimes, torture, murder, and we are also going to be talking about sex workers because they're the target of this person. And I haven't used sex workers as a trigger before, but I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? They might not necessarily want to hear this episode. So that is for you guys. And I also kind of wanted to say if you ever feel like we miss a trigger warning, like you were listening to it and you were like, whoa, I did not want to hear about that. You can go to like the episode post that we do and just be like, hey, this could have been a good trigger warning. That's fine if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'm the worst with that. And
Sometimes we forget completely.
like I will not think about it like at the beginning of the episode, but as I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, this should have been a trigger warning. I'm sorry.
I know, and it's hard to Google like what trigger warnings you should put in. I've done it and I'm like, I need like a comprehensive list of different things, I think.
You know
I
it's gonna be
found
a
one that's
gnarly
pretty good.
episode when you start like naming off like 10 of them. Like this is bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, it's not a fun one, guys. But I guess let's just get into it and you'll find out why. On August 7th, 1987, at around 1 in the morning, a man drove down Union Avenue in Portland, Oregon, seeking companionship. He was driving a blue Nissan truck. He stopped near a woman near Northeast Avenue Street and Wygant Street, and he was like, hey, would you like to get in? This wasn't the first time he had met this woman before. In fact, he had already picked her up over the summer as well. So she recognized him. She got in. Roughly 2 hours later, that same truck pulled into the parking lot of a Denny's restaurant. The bars had just closed, so Denny's wasn't empty. It was kind of popping. There were a few people there. It was the only restaurant open in the area, not to mention that there were like houses and apartments kind of situated around there. Like, who doesn't want Denny's at 3 o'clock in the morning?
I was going to say that. Like, I could rock a Denny's in the middle of the night.
I would love a waffle at any time of the day. But 3 a.m., a man woke up out of a dead sleep, to the screams of a woman coming from the Denny's parking lot near his apartment. She screamed out, "Help me, I'm being raped." He got out of bed and went to the window. At the exact moment, another man happened to run under a streetlight, giving the tired guy a pretty good look at who that person was. At the same time, a man named James was sitting in his van in the Denny's parking lot, and he also heard this woman screaming. He looked out, and he was able to make out two people at the end of the parking lot in the midst of a struggle. And the longer he looked, the more clearly he could see that there was a naked woman with a man looming over her.
Oh my gosh.
Another man, his name's Charles, was just outside the restaurant, and he also heard her screams. So Charles and James run towards what's happening. They're going towards the struggling couple to figure out what's going on.
Love to
And the
see it.
man, I know, for real. The man sees them coming, runs off. Totally opposite direction. He's just like bolts. Charles gets to the woman first, and he finds her with her throat slit open. Without flinching, Charles performed CPR because he had been trained in emergency medicine, so he was ready. He goes to perform CPR. James ran inside to call 911. And as more people surrounded this incredibly bloody scene, they realized that this woman had also been stabbed several times.
Oh
And
my
it
God.
was likely she was not alive. Yeah, it's awful. So now there's a group of several people. They're looking around. James comes back out, and as he's coming out, he sees a man come out of like the shadows in a building that's across the street. He comes out of the shadows and he tries to run to a blue Nissan truck parked near the parking lot. James yells, he's like, "There he is, that's the guy." So two other guys that aren't these first two run to their cars and they drive them and try to block him in, which that's super badass. Good for them. But blue Nissan just like ramps the sidewalk and escapes. So Richard was one of these guys. He chases this pickup truck in his own car at 100 miles an hour. Just like, is like, "Nope, you're not going anywhere." Chases him. He does not catch the runaway truck, but he does get close enough to get his license plate.
A
Hey, good on you. So he gets the plate, he goes back to Denny's, and law enforcement's there. Uh, the woman has been taken to the hospital. He gives the plate number to the police, and the other 6 men who were all there at the same time, they all give statements. So these 6 guys heard this woman scream for at least 2 minutes, which, when you're thinking about it, it doesn't seem like that long of a time.
That's excruciating amount of time.
Yeah, but in this case, it's kind of a long time. It's just enough time. But they said at first it sounded very muffled, like it was coming from inside somewhere and they couldn't tell where it was coming from. And then the man who had looked at his window when he like woke up because he heard it, he was able to give a description as he had seen him in the direct light. But near the scene of the murder, they found a double-length pair of shoelaces tied as though it had been used to like hog tie someone. And they also found this woman's clothes. Her jeans, her hoodie, one sneaker. Just one. At the hospital, she was identified as Jennifer Smith. She was 25. She was a mother of 2. She didn't live that far from the street where she had gotten into this strange man's truck. It's not relevant. I mean, it is and it isn't. She did have an arrest record for indecent exposure and solicitation, but police wasted no time searching for this guy who was responsible. Like, that didn't matter.
And I think it's important to say that because we have seen so many times where if sadly a victim has any type of record like that,
They brush it off.
they are not a priority.
Yeah.
So
So
it's good
this,
that it's good that that didn't matter.
yeah, it absolutely was a priority. So the county sheriff's detectives were John Turner and Mike Mikado. John Turner is in this thing the whole time, okay? Detective Turner. They ran this Oregon license plate that had been reported. They run it through the system, and the information that comes back is that this truck is owned by 33-year-old Dayton Leroy Rogers of Canby, Oregon. They were at Rogers' house by 5 a.m. This happened at 3 a.m. the same day.
I love to see it.
Yeah.
Love to
He
see it.
was not home. Surprise. But that was because he owned his own auto shop and he was still there, pulling in all nighter, quote unquote. And that wasn't unusual. Rogers notoriously kept strange hours. The detectives were at the shop by like 5:30 or 5. Yeah, 5:35 they were at his shop. A man, clearly a little drunk, came to the door. He smelled like booze, his pupils were dilated, but he could speak okay, and he let the officers in, explaining that he hadn't left the shop all night. He'd been working there, and he was drinking bourbon mixed with strawberry mix all night long. Hadn't left once. Yeah, I know. I kind of was like, ugh, also. But the detectives determined that was a lie when Dayton was like, yeah, search my shop, search the truck, do what you gotta do. And they promptly found that the engine on his pickup was still hot, like to the touch.
They're like, "Wow, this almost seems
Seems
like
like
you
you
were
left.
gone or
And
your
not to
truck is
mention,
overheating."
the plate and the description matched the vehicle that had just left Ennis. So, in addition to this, despite saying he hadn't left all night, he had a bandaged hand. The detectives were like, hey, what happened to your hand? He was like, oh, yeah, I accidentally slipped on my hacksaw. I had to go to the hospital and I got it treated. So he hadn't left all night, but he had gone to the hospital to get his hand treated from his hacksaw. And they were like, you're sketchy as hell. You're arrested. Here are your rights. We're taking you into custody.
Can you imagine just being like, "I slipped on my hacksaw."
My hacksaw slipped, cut my hand all up. From a guy named Dayton Leroy Rogers? Yes, I can. I can believe that. Back at the police department, they learned that Dayton Leroy Rogers also had a history with the law. In 1972, he was 18 years old. He had picked up a 15-year-old hitchhiker. The 70s.
Wild
He
man.
again, quote unquote here, convinced her to go to the woods and have sex with him. Talked her into it. A few days later, they met back up under the premise of gathering sticks to make whistles. Again, the 70s. Yeah. But they went to the woods to have sex again. Once in the woods, Rogers told the girl to close her eyes, giving the impression that he was going to kiss her. But instead, he stabbed her in the stomach, right above the belly button, with a hunting knife.
I
He,
take back anything I said about being wholesome.
yeah, not wholesome at
Not
all.
wholesome at all.
He told her he didn't think he could trust her to be quiet because what he was doing was statutory rape. The girl convinced Rogers to take her to the hospital. She said that she loved him and that she would do anything. He apologized. He took her to the hospital. She survived. And he had only taken her to the hospital because she promised she would say that she had done it herself. It was an accident. But the hospital was like, this is not an accident. And so the hospital got her to tell on him, essentially. So he pled guilty to second-degree assault and was placed on 4 years probation. for stabbing a girl in the stomach.
The
Yeah.
70s, man.
The 70s. Poof. And guess what? Less than 6 months later, he was arrested again for sexually assaulting two different 15-year-old girls with a soda bottle. He was charged with 1 count of second degree and 1 count of third degree assault for each of the girls, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
That's bullshit.
Yep, this whole thing is bullshit. So they sent him to Oregon State Hospital, and he was released on December 12th, 1974. After that sentencing, the DA wrote a report that said this man is an extreme danger to the community, particularly young women. He is sexually and physically violent, and without question, is a murder case looking to happen. Like, it's going to happen. 2
But,
years later.
but let's let him out.
Yeah, the DA doesn't know what they're talking about. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. 2 years later, in January of 1976, Rogers was charged and then acquitted of rape. But while that charge was still pending, in February, he took 2 high school girls at knife point, raped one of them while the other was forced to watch or else be raped herself. Then he had bound their hands with a wire hanger. And when he was done, he apologized. And they reported it. And so he was arrested again on more rape charges, in addition to a coercion charge. He pled insanity again, and he was only convicted of the coercion charge, and he received 5 years in prison.
I'm
You
so
want to
mad.
know why the rape charges were dropped? Because initially, he had pulled up to these 2 girls who were skipping school, and he talked them into drinking beer and smoking weed with him. So technically, they went with him willingly initially, and then they were forced at knife point to stay with him so that he could rape them. So they blamed the girls for drinking and smoking with him and essentially like asking for it. Yeah, it's total bullshit.
I am boiling over with anger right now.
Yeah, it is infuriating. I'll say it again. I'm so glad that we live in this time now where that shit would never fly.
I mean, sometimes it still does.
Yeah, it might still fly, but like not to this extent, I don't think.
No.
If that happened, no way.
Yeah, and I don't know, if you're listening and you are a male or a female, I'm not gonna discriminate in this sense, and you have been drinking or doing drugs with someone and you force them to have sex and they're saying no, and I don't know, have to have
With
a
a
knife.
knife
If you have to pull out a knife, that is not consent.
and bind them,
Yeah,
like
that is not consent. Even if they are going along with it so they're not murdered, that is not consent.
not
That is
consent.
rape.
The crazy thing is that like this list, it's not even done. That's not where it
I
stops.
know. That's like why I'm getting like
Angry because it's only just begun.
20 minutes in and I'm like ready to go postal.
He also went to jail for kidnapping a sex worker and parole/probation violation. He spent overall only 27 months in prison, and his parole was terminated in January of 1983.
Wait. 27 months total for
Mm.
everything he's ever done? You
Mm-hmm,
gotta be.
mm-hmm. Nope. 27 months in prison. So let's rewind. Fast forward. We're going to go back to Jennifer. The state medical examiner said that there were 11 knife wounds in her body. 10 were incredibly deep. 1 was her throat. Of the 8 to the front of her body, 2 were in her stomach. The cut that likely caused her death was the one in her chest that severed a major artery. There were 2 in her back that cut a V into her liver. And that's not to mention the other cuts and the bruising on her wrists and defensive cuts on her hands. So she was tortured.
Her poor babies.
Yeah. They arrested Rogers on suspicion of murder, and they continued to search his shop, where they found the remnants of a single sneaker in the shop's wood stove.
Oh,
Among
weird.
other things that seemed weird, there were grommets that looked like they were from some clothes in the shape of a star. There were rhinestones. There's colorful glass in there. His truck was thoroughly investigated, and inside they found blood that did not belong to Rogers or Jennifer. There were knife cuts all over the car, in the dash, and the lining on the doors and the seats, everywhere. They found Jennifer's ring fingerprint on the outside passenger door handle. And after speaking with the hospital, Rogers claimed to have been at that morning. They said that it was likely he was not cut with a hacksaw because it was a knife because the cut was too smooth. It was not
Okay.
like jagged
Ragged.
like a
Yeah.
hacksaw would have cut you. So detectives are like, this is our guy. This is definitely our guy. Let's get some nails for this coffin, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do the lineup with all the guys from Denny's, like the Denny's bros. Hey, out of all of these people, who do you think it is? 20 seconds. They're like, it's him. Dayton, Leroy, Rogers. And then they go and talk to other sex workers in the area. And honestly, them going and talking to the sex workers, it blasted this thing wide open. Because these women, they show them a photo of him and they're like, oh yeah, that's Steve. And you're like,
Nope.
who's Steve? According to them and him, Steve is a professional gambler from Las Vegas. Sometimes he's from Reno. On average, he would offer $60 for a bondage scenario. These girls all recalled a very similar situation. They would be required to be completely nude with no shoes on because he had a foot fetish. After they were undressed, the women would be bound at their wrists and ankles with whatever he had available. Shoelaces, rope, wire, dog collars, whatever. And once they were bound, he would torture and mutilate them. Before each of these dates, he would restock his bottled orange juice and vodka mini bottles that he kept in his truck so that he could make and drink screwdrivers while he did this. And that's important to note. So make a mental note. Remember that.
Screwdrivers. Okay.
Yeah. Tiny little screwdrivers. In a particularly horrifying story, a woman named Heather realized that she was out of cigarettes and was walking to the convenience store when a blue Nissan truck stopped and asked her if she would like a ride. Heather was also a sex worker, so she agreed. She got into the truck, and the two headed out of town toward the Molalla Forest. Steve, as he said his name was, stated his desires, and she said no. She was like, nope, I am not into that. Take me back. He refused. Turned onto a logging road, which is not paved, it's like a dirt road, and began picking up speed, trying to hold on to her. There was a struggle, and Heather jumped from the truck as it sped as it sped 60 miles an hour through the forest.
Jeez.
Luckily, as she jumped, a logging truck was close behind and saw her in the road and stopped. The logger picked her up and took her to get medical attention. And she reported that crime to Detective John Turner. Before this had ever happened to Jennifer.
Oh, that's suspicious.
Mm-hmm. A different sex worker recalled that Steve once agreed to pay her $50 for sex. That was the deal. And instead, once she was in his truck, He tied her wrists and ankles and held her hostage for hours. He tortured her by biting her hard enough to draw blood all over her
Oh.
body. Another woman told them that Dayton had threatened to cut off her breasts with his knife. A different one said he cut off all of her clothes with a machete. One of the women told detectives that he took a carving knife to her foot and cut the heel of her foot off while he masturbated.
What the hell?
Yeah. And I cannot imagine the agony that that must have
No.
been. He That's what he would do. He would torture these women, masturbate while he tortured them. Some of them said that they were in so much pain that they begged him to kill them. And with all of this testimony, all of these women saying the same thing, Rogers was indicted for rape, kidnap, sexual abuse, torture, murder on the Jennifer case. And this is all around August 7th, right? So this happens at the beginning of August.
Mhm.
But at the end of August, actually the end, August 31st, a crossbow hunter who was hunting in Molalla Forest stumbled across the partially buried body of a nude woman. And he was like, nope, getting out of here. He gets out of there, immediately reports his findings, and investigators show up. The hunter led them to the location of the body, and it was confirmed that this woman had been murdered. But she had also been there a while. So because he had gotten out and it took a while, it was really a hard location for them to get to. It was dark when they got there. So they closed off the area, put some watch people out, and said, we're going to come back in the morning. By the time they got back in the morning, search crews pretty much immediately found two more bodies within 50 feet of the first one.
Oh.
So they were like, we need to call dogs in. Like, we need to call tracking dogs. So a total of 7 women in various states of decomposition were discovered over 5 days. All of the women had been stabbed and mutilated, and some of their feet had been removed or partially removed, probably while they were still alive. 2 of the 7 had been there significantly longer than the others. And despite us talking about the story, hearing this story, and being like, yep, that's the guy. Like, that's definitely that other guy. Initially, detectives didn't even consider him for it because he was in jail on another murder charge. But our homie, Detective John Turner from Jennifer's case, shows up and he starts looking around this crime scene and he goes, wow, there are tiny vodka bottles and tiny orange juice bottles everywhere, littering
Oh.
the floor of the forest. So they're like, I know who did this. John Turner's like, there it is, last hammer. So over the next few months, these recovered women were identified as Lisa Mock, 23, Maureen Hodges, 26, Christine Adams, 35, Nani Cervantes, 26, Retha Giles, 16, Cynthia DeVore, 21. The 7th wasn't identified until 2013.
Oh, wow.
It was Tanya Johnson, and she was only 18 years old. Detectives agreed to wait until after the trial for Jennifer's murder to use the evidence that they had to try him for the murders of the women in the Molalla Forest. Okay? And also, kind of important to note, he had a wife and a kid at home. He had like
Oh.
an 18-month-old baby the whole time this was happening. He told his wife that he would work late, like he had a car to get done or he had a lawnmower to work on, or so he would come home for dinner and then leave and pretty much stay at the shop, not at the shop all night.
Mhm.
As we well know, that's not what he was doing. He said that he suffered from migraines and they would only go away when he was working. And she didn't question him. She had heard rumors and thought that like he was drinking and maybe not. Like she thought maybe he was cheating on her, but she like chose to trust him. So that guy sucks even more.
Ugh. I always
And the
feel so bad for when it's situations like this, like the children of the murderers, serial killers, the wives, husbands,
and then the
parents.
children of the victims as well. Like you're
Yeah.
ruining
It's
complete.
yeah, it's
Yeah, you're
generations.
you're generationally ruining lives. Not just one, not just two, like for years. So the first trial is for Jennifer, and this asshole pleads innocent. Just straight up innocent. He said that he and Jennifer were having consensual sex. He had $200 in his wallet that she saw, and when he got out of the truck to pee, she pulled the knife from the glove box and attacked him.
Oh,
A
that's weird.
struggle ensued. Yeah, so weird. A struggle ensued, and he accidentally slit her throat. That,
What about everything else? Is that the
yeah,
struggle? The struggle?
that, yeah, yep.
Mm.
No one bought it. They were like, no, that's not feasible for
Yeah,
that to
you're
happen.
wrong.
No one's going to get stabbed in the liver twice from behind in a struggle.
Yeah.
So he's sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Jennifer. But Molalla Forest trial was still looming. And during that trial, they spent 5 weeks hearing testimony from the various sex workers who this man had violated multiple times.
Mhm.
Floria Adams was the 15-year-old daughter of one of the victims. She said that the star shaped grommets that had been recovered from his wood stove were from her mom's favorite pair of jeans, and she
Oh,
recognized them. The colored glass that was in the wood stove had also been found in another one of the victims, like in her hair. A psychological evaluation revealed that Dayton committed violent acts under very specific circumstances when he was intoxicated and sexually aroused, in a scenario that was bondage, foot fetish. For him to become violent, he must also feel like he had been cheated either emotionally or sexually, and there must always be a helpless woman as his victim. This was the exact evaluation from the psychiatrist at his trial. He also needed to maintain he needed to be pretty sure that he wouldn't be caught, and his victim had to be someone that he felt like he could dehumanize,
I
like a
hate
sex
that.
worker. Yeah. All of these things had to be present for him to become violent. And they were like, he won't be a threat to men in prison. But there's a senior forensic psychologist who said that he would pose a threat to men in prison. He said that um, Dayton, while he had been in prison previously, had engaged in sexual relationships with men and
Mhm.
contended that without women being available to be his victims, it was only a matter of time before he started selecting like males to do this to.
That's what I would think, like, he would still have to have a proxy, like, no,
Yeah.
this level of, like, that doesn't just go away in prison.
No, and it's the act, it is murder that is pleasurable
Mhm.
for like these sadistic people, these
Yeah.
especially sexually sadistic ones who torture their victims as a way to get off. Ugh. It took 6 hours for the jury to convict Dayton Leroy Rogers of aggravated murder on all counts. There's actually 14 counts, double one for each. He was
Good.
sentenced to death by lethal injection. As of 2015, or since 2015. Despite appeals, Rogers was sentenced to death at least 4 times. He just kept getting resentenced to death until 2019, when a law in Oregon changed how
Oh, no.
aggravated murder was defined and what types of aggravated murder warrant like the death penalty. So in Oregon currently, aggravated murder that warrants the death penalty only applies to the murders of children younger than 14, murders of law enforcement officers, terrorist attacks that kill at least 2 people, prison killings carried by someone who had previously been convicted of murder, and that's it.
That
So like
I don't
that's
agree
a
with that.
very slim, those are slim pickings there, you know. Um so his death sentence was actually overturned in October 2021. So just last year.
Ugh,
He now he's just serving life. And I know I normally give more of a backstory on the murderer. So, like, if you want to know, yes, as a child, he was physically and sexually abused, and he may have suffered a brain injury. And I feel sad for his little baby child self, but not for him because he's still alive. He's
no.
68, and I hope he rots. Like, I hope his skin falls off and he dies a horrible death
I hope he has the worst day every day. Like,
every day of his
physically,
life.
I
This case just made me so angry that I was like, I don't even want to, like, I don't want to talk about him or what he went through. Like, I normally am pretty sympathetic to those, those situations, but no, I was like, this guy is disgusting.
I mm, I don't agree with Oregon's current death penalty rules.
Definition of aggravated murder.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Well, they don't,
I
I don't know that they even really give the death penalty that much anymore. I guess I should have looked more into like what the current numbers are for
I just feel
death
like if
penalty.
anyone deserves the death penalty, it is this guy.
It's people like this, like these serial killers,
Exactly.
especially ones that torture their victims
Yeah.
until they're gone. Yes, it
Yes.
is
I
a nightmare.
I'm not saying that the current standards of, like, what they define as, like, punishable by death crime, like, I'm not saying that that is not relevant. I'm just saying that there needs to be an expansion to that, to serial killers who have at least 8 victims.
Yeah, at least 8. Not to mention all of the people, like the
Yeah, like,
attempted
it's
murder, the rape, like all of it.
and let's
In
not,
what
like
world is all of that stuff not equivalent to like the murder of a law enforcement officer? Or the murder of a terrorist attack that kills at least 2 people. That was a terrorist attack.
yeah, he
Like,
was
he was
terrorizing
a
women
community. Ugh, I
and
know it doesn't fit the definition of what a terrorist attack is,
I
but in my mind, it does.
yeah, and I just feel like had you guys kept him locked up the many,
For the
many, many
other
times
times,
before, we wouldn't be having this conversation about this D-bag.
literally, a DA warned them in, like, 72,
Yeah,
like,
it's
15 years before this happened, like, this guy is a murder waiting to happen,
and it's like
and
that
y
TikTok, "You're shocked? You're gonna tell me you're shocked?"
Yes.
And I hate that, like, mm, for him to decide that he can dehumanize sex workers because he is pompous and feels like they're beneath him makes me wanna fucking
Like,
vomit.
he is beneath the core of the earth, like, that's how low that idiot is. Ugh, and, like, his little liquor bottles, like, he always kept a stock of them in his truck. They actually found one of the green caps from the, like, little orange juice bottles
Mhm.
in his truck, and they found, like, the trash from them in his truck, and they found them at his shop, and then they found them in the forest floor,
This
so it
guy was
really
just like
just,
a
like,
drunken asshole, like 24/7. That's gross.
100%.
That's gross.
Ugh, yeah.
His wife didn't notice his truck was all slashed up?
I don't know. I don't know.
She
I
was
mean,
probably like, "I don't care." Like,
she's
not
pretty
that
much like a single mom. She never sees her husband because she's got an 18-month-old baby she's
Mhm.
trying to take care of. Like, I don't
And maybe he was like a douche to her, and it's one of those, like, "As long as you're not here, I don't give a shit." I'm assuming
for
obviously, she didn't think he was out, like, murdering, but
yeah.
just like a, "If you're gonna go out and, like, have an affair, please just get out
There
of
was a
here."
lot of in one of the things I read, there was a lot of things that said, like, a relative tipped someone off. A relative suggested that they look into this, and I'm willing
I
to
bet it
bet
was
she was the relative.
the relative.
Yeah, because
Man,
somebody, like, told them to check the wood stove. They were like, "Look in that wood stove."
I hate the cases where there were so many chances to have him locked away.
Yeah, and especially, like, he was clearly targeting, like, young girls.
Yeah.
100% he was targeting young
Mhm.
girls,
That makes me
and
sick. Ugh.
yeah.
I feel like it should be the same, obviously, I feel like, and I have a feeling that this is gonna be something we get a message about, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I feel like you are killing a sex worker in their line of work. You kill an officer in their line of work. You kill a sex workers that is killing someone who is working. Like, it
Yep,
doesn't matter if you agree with their job or not. That's not your place to decide.
yep, exactly.
It's
Like, he
killing an officer is a hate crime. Killing only sex workers is a hate crime.
yeah, that is a
Like
great way to put it.
it is for him to have I understand if you're like, "Hey, no one after this point is gonna get the death penalty," but I think you should have fried his ass.
And honestly, he's been sitting on death row since for 30 years,
Mhm.
you
That
know?
is another thing
Since
that's
1989, 30 until last year when it got overturned,
mhm.
31 years. He was on 32 years.
Mm, that pisses me off. This case, like, I get no closure. I'm mad and I'm
Even though
apologizing.
they got him, yes,
Yeah.
we're glad for that. It's just like, how long?
How
How
many
long?
times did this man get reported from women who were like, "This guy assaulted me"?
This guy is scary. And not only that, like, the Molalla Forest is vast. It's like 90,000 acres. So
Mm,
if they found I mean, I guess kinda like with the Green River Killer, it was like
mhm.
a cluster area where they would drop them. I have no doubt there may be another cluster area
Oh, I
somewhere
would
else.
agree. I would
Yeah.
agree. You don't have that kind of rage all the time, and that's it.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm, mm,
So I
mm,
would not
mm.
be surprised if this one day resurfaces again
Do we know
outside
why
of him, getting overturned. Do we know why what? I'm sorry.
do we know why the 18-year-old girl, why it took her so long to be identified? Was she one of the first ones that were in there? Like, was it advanced decomp, or she just there was
I
not
don't
good
know.
records?
There I did not read why specifically she was. It just said that it took a long time to figure out who she was, and her family said that they do not want to be contacted by media, that they do not want to be contacted by anyone.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
don't I don't, like, think that's wrong.
Like, leave people alone. Let them
Man, that one
mourn.
sucked.
Yeah, I know. I told you
Ugh,
that I felt like we had taken it easy on.
we did. We had this conversation where we were like, "Yeah, we've been kind of" obviously, all of these crimes are important, all the victims are important, but we had not it had been a while since we had, like, sheer brutality. But don't worry, guys. If you are sitting here thinking they've lost their touch, we I am also doing a
We
serial
haven't.
killer. We haven't. We've been oh, man.
Do you wanna
We have
hear my funny
yeah,
screwdriver
that's what I was
story? Because that's what I was gonna tell you.
please.
So, this reminded me of it, but I didn't think it was appropriate to say before. Okay. So when I was in England, we went to a wedding. My cousin and I went to a wedding, and
Mhm.
we went to the bar, and my cousin asked for a screwdriver, which is vodka and orange juice. And they were like, "What? Screwdriver? What? A screwdriver? What's in it? Vodka and orange juice. What do you guys call it?" And he just went, "Vodka and orange juice."
It's true.
And I was like, that just made me laugh a lot. And I thought about it like
Now
every
that, like,
time
you
I
say
saw.
it like that's like, you know what? That's kinda, like, not wrong. We do have, like, a, "This is my sex on the beach." Or
Uh,
the Long Island iced tea. That is the one that gets
that
me
is
because
not iced tea in
no.
any capacity.
When I turned 21, I was like, "I'm gonna get me a Long Island iced tea," and then I was like, "This is just liquor and more liquor, like, and a little bit
I'm
of
gonna get
Sprite or
me
something."
a blackout that I don't remember tomorrow.
I'm
That's
making
what I'm
bad
getting.
decisions.
Yeah. So that was my liquor story that I thought of when I was reading about these tiny liquor bottles.
Well,
Not super relevant, but
it is extremely
funny.
relevant to me because now I'm gonna just be like, "Can I have a vodka and orange juice?" And they're gonna be like, "A screwdriver?" I'm like, "No."
No,
Like,
vodka and orange
vodka and
juice.
orange juice. Well, if you listen to this episode and you thought to yourself, "I could make a better true crime podcast," you should.
Do it.
You should. And Zencaster makes it extremely easy. You need zero software, just the internet. Pretty soon, you're just going to need your phone and you can start a podcast. We have been, there's been quite a few people message us, and I'm not trying to brag, but we are very open to giving any type of pointers or tips or what we do, how we research, anything like that. Please reach out. Go to zencaster.com/pricing. Use promo code gruesome with a capital G. Get 30% off. They have a free version, but if you're into video podcasting, which is what we do for our Patreon listeners, we're going to like be branching out more with that later as well. The paid version has better like video quality and audio quality, and you get some more perks and all of that. But it's dope. You
Yeah.
should do it.
So you can make bank on YouTube also with your video podcast. Double whammy.
Can I get on a soapbox for a second?
Climb up.
All right, here I go. We talked a little bit about this, about like this sensationalism of like Kanye West and Kim Kardashian and like how he is like going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat thinking today, first, Meg and I had talked about like we have family members who have mental health issues. So we were like, damn, I feel that. Like I feel the ups and downs. Like I empathize. But as a domestic violence survivor, I realized how extremely triggering his behavior is. And like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not funny, it's harassment, it's disgusting. And I had that like, holy shit, I'm part of the problem moment because I had like kept reading about it and I was like, I can't believe like this is what's going on. But we are watching a woman be harassed
Harassed.
and stalked in her new relationship. Like, she's being stalked, he's being stalked,
Threatened.
threatened. He's asking for people to like yell and
Asking
scream and
people to threaten them and harass them. Yeah.
yes. And like that is what you are seeing play out in the media. This is what women and men deal with every single day who are in relationships like this. So if you've ever once been like, I don't understand how people can have relationships like this. This is what it's like. It's the constant, like, I'm going to get you back. You're not going to be with anybody else but me. The absolute complete control. So I do think that men and women who are, who have been in relationships with domestic violence, the more I like pondered on it, I was like, holy shit, like this is hard. Like this is
Mad.
hard to watch. This is, yeah. And it's being used as an entertainment value versus like what it is, stalking and harassment. But it's like one of those like media, you have money things.
Yeah, and
Like
then
he's
they're like posting, oh, this is how they're reacting. And I'm like, you know how they should be reacting? Like with a lawsuit. Like that
yeah, like
says,
restraining
"Hey,
order.
you can't be near me." Like I know that I keep reading it's like, "We want to co-parent. We want to do this. I want to do this right. And I'm like, yeah, but to what extent?
Yeah. And
Ugh,
I'm
like,
sure there's more stuff going on with our Lord and Savior Kris Jenner because she doesn't sleep. She works harder than any PR person I've ever read about. So I'm sure there are things coming and but this is what it's like. Like what you're seeing is what it's like. Only sometimes it's not like I'm going to get you back. It's like I'm going to kill you. So,
yep.
yeah. And
Or
it's
even just like the it's like the relationship that you go into to like try to make the other person be like, see what I'm missing, and then when it doesn't go your way, the absolute freak out that
mhm.
followed that whole
Yep,
situation. Yeah, it was just
absolutely.
a nightmare.
Yeah, this is
So
I
we have
it's
big
awful.
feelings about this right now. We were texting
Mm.
about it earlier. uh
Because honestly, I think Instagram should completely disable his account, take away I mean, that's you're inciting violence, you're harassing, like, these are, like,
and
harassment
I think
things.
most of it's happening on Twitter even. Like
Yeah,
it's less Instagram and more Twitter. And I don't
I
I
don't
don't
have
have a
Twitter.
I don't have Twitter either. I've never been very good at Twitter. I just
I went through a
I
phase,
tried.
but then I realized, like, I don't think anyone cares what I have to say, and then I started a podcast.
My kid was like, "Why don't they call it Tweeter? Their picture is a bird." And I was like,
Like,
"Well,
girl,
Twitter
you're
is
not
also like
wrong.
your Twitter's also a bird noise, but that is funny."
Tweet, tweet.
Uh, tweet tweet. Um,
But
yeah,
yeah, I just wanted to say that because it's been
just want to
bothering
get
me.
on that soapbox. I liked it. Thank you. Thank you. And I really appreciated your little hate crime speech in there. That was a very good point I hadn't considered. I liked it.
Yeah, I
It was
know.
well put. It was eloquent.
We're gonna have someone be like, "You can't compare the 2." And I'm gonna be like, will
Too
direct
late.
I will direct you to my Kris Jenner."
My PR person, it's me.
Yes,
Um,
she is the PR person.
we talk about this. That's why you only hear from me. Connie sees though. She's in the
I do
shadows
see.
lurking.
I am in the shadows lurking. Um, I I lurk a lot. I actually will I can't say this. Never mind. Actually, I'm gonna say it. I will get very overwhelmed with the amount of messages and I will read them. I'm like, oh my God, this is super nice. And like Meg and I will have conversations about them, but sometimes I'll just mark them unread so I can take care of it.
Yeah, no, I this has happened a lot recently where I like go in to see what I need to do for the day. It's like my job checklist, and I'm like, oh, there's like 15 messages open that I didn't even know we had.
Yeah. And like I've been trying to do better with it, but I get very overwhelmed and I still am at the point where it's like, I can't believe people want to listen to us. So when they're like, we love you, I'm like, okay, but why?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Social media is overwhelming in general,
Yeah,
especially I think with like TikTok and Reels and just like the expectation. Like, because posting a picture is so easy, but now when you're moving into like these video formats, you're like,
mhm.
I don't want to make videos. I don't know how to make videos. Like, why do I want to? I don't want to do that. It's
Yeah.
okay if you just want to watch other people's too.
Yeah, I barely even like I'll post on my personal Instagram stories, but I don't really even post on there very often. I it's just too much. I will spend hours scrolling and like laughing and being like, "Oh my God, these people are so great." And I will have the thought where it's like, "I wish I could do this." Like, I wish I could just like I'm gonna make a reel today. I just can't. It's not in me. I spent like 2 days socializing. Like we had the birthday party on Saturday, then we had people over for the Super Bowl. And I went to bed at like 6 o'clock on Monday. I was like, I'm tapped out. This is it.
That's enough. It's enough
It's
for today.
too much. At work, my boss was like, "Are you okay?" And I told him, I was like, "Look, I'm gonna be honest. I was around people all weekend and I'm feeling extremely overwhelmed." So, you know.
I'm tapped out. My social meter has popped out at the top like a cartoon, like when the
Mhm.
thermometer gets too hot. That really happened to me once. I was like trying to stay home from school. We had one of those glass thermometers with like the
Mhm.
and I stuck it in my mom's coffee. And I was
Well,
like,
that's
"This'll
dangerous.
work." And it busted, it, like, exploded, and then it was in her coffee, and I was like, "I can't swap her coffee," so I just left it, and she drank it, and then I started, like, freaking myself out. I'm like, "What if it's
What?
mercury?" But they didn't make them with mercury then. They
I was
had
about
to
to
know
say,
how.
you could have killed your mom.
What if I poisoned her?
I would have
But,
been very
it actually
upset.
might have been my dad's coffee. I don't know whose it was. I was just like, "This is the coffee." So I just, like, backed away slowly and went to
Nothing
school.
to see here. I'm feeling fine. I all of a sudden feel just fine.
What am I gonna do? I wonder if they ever wondered, like, "Where's the thermometer? We must have lost
Why have
it."
I had the worst diarrhea of my life today?
Probably because I ate the inside of or drank the inside of a thermometer.
We're gonna have to talk later about the fact that you just like left it and like what that says about you as a person.
It's like I'm not willing to take responsibility for this moment of my life because I was just trying to have a nice day.
I just want to stay at home.
I
You
could have
know,
made it way worse.
that's my favorite part about being an adult is I can just be like, I don't want to do that today, so I'm not going to.
It's hard to get to that point though, because like for so much of your childhood,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do it. Like you have to go, you got to do this, you got to get up, you got to get ready, got to do, and like you still have to do that as an adult, but at least you have the ability to be like, nah, I'm good today.
Well, I want to direct you to us talking about me getting arrested in the living room because I decided not to go to school. So I have never been one to be like, I have to do this.
That's
It's
true.
like,
That's fair.
nah, that's not me. That's not happening.
But I
Consequences, I'll
mean,
deal with them later.
like that school structure does like there's no point in my mind that you should have been arrested because you didn't want to go to school. I
I'm
understand what your mom was doing. I understand the lesson that she was teaching you there,
no,
but
I still
I'm
stand by
not
that one.
okay with it.
Mm-mm. I love my mom to death, and that is the biggest flaw of a parent she ever did.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
I need
Especially
to
considering you weren't even doing anything illegal.
know.
Like you were
And
just not going to school. I guess that's truancy, but I think that's stupid too.
but I think this goes back to like girls who have like ADHD and like mental health, like anxiety issues and everything, because we are not actively diagnosed as fast. So I was overwhelmed. I needed a mental health day or two. And it was like, no, you go to
We
school. And then I was like, I will not.
we let the newly 7-year-old take. She's actually taken quite a few mental health days in the last couple months. She just seems really tired, and I think she's growing, like just
Hmm.
in general. But yesterday, when she went to bed, she looked so tired. Like the circles under her eyes, I looked at her, I was like, "You look exhausted."
Yeah.
Which, and so we just let her sleep today because we thought she needed it. We're
She
like,
had
"You
a
don't have
busy
to go."
weekend. She was also
I
like me.
know.
She's like, I was around people too much. I have got to go.
Yeah, it was her birthday party, so she probably was just exhausted from that, and then she went to a Super Bowl party with her dad while I stayed home and studied.
She had a busy weekend too.
Yeah, she was tired.
I have struggled with since like we were all sick and like my middle son was like extremely sick and he was out of school for like it's been like a total of like 2 weeks. He is at the point where it's like, bro, I know, like, but you got to go to school. Like, I don't
I
know
know when
if
you don't let them go enough, then they're like, "I don't have to go.
like you
I'm
have to
doing just
go.
fine." Again, bringing me back to my point. When you're a kid and you're just like, you have to do things.
Mhm. My daughter started the but why? And there are sometimes I'm like, you know what? You're right. You can
Because
do
I
this because
said so.
I don't have a good reason for you.
Because I said so is not a good reason, even though it is relevant.
Mhm.
Like sometimes it is. It's just because I don't want you to do it. Like that's
Also
why.
because I don't want to do it. We can't finger paint right now because I don't want to finger paint. But
I don't
why?
want to clean up the mess. But
It's not
why?
on my journey right now.
That's not a part of my journey. Finger painting is not in my life
It's
right now.
not
Mine's
happening.
Barbies. Barbies are not a part of my journey today. I'm very sorry.
I wish that is like the one thing if I could change about like my psyche out of everything that is screwed up in my brain, the one thing I wish I had more like of an imagination to the point of like I could play with the kids better because my two youngest are very into their imagination and my brain is not wired that way.
Yeah, I'm
So
with
they're
you.
like,
Like, sometimes in certain things it is, but, like, I would
Mhm.
much rather, like, build a puzzle or
Yeah,
read
I
books
agree.
or something that has an end that I can see. But, like, I
Yeah.
have a very hard time just, like, playing Barbies or, like, playing toys. I'm
Mhm.
just, like, I'm thinking of all the other things. You try to be present, but
And they hand you like a shoe and they're like, "This is a tractor." And I'm like, "No, this is a shoe." I I give them the freedom and like I will go along with whatever they say, but I am dying inside. I'm dying
The
inside.
light in me is slowly dying.
But if you wanna, like I'll read books with you constantly, like, I will do creative outlets like the coloring. I will do that part of it. I will build Legos all day. Give me
Yeah,
some Legos.
exactly.
I but I also can't take plain Legos and make something. I'm like, "I need a book."
I got a book, like, that use these, like, use this book to make your Legos into something else,
Yeah, yeah, I
and
have
I
that.
can never, like, finish one thing in it because I'm like, "I can't find all these exact pieces."
This looks like the piece that my kid kept sticking up his nose and I threw away.
Yeah, my husband and I got real, I don't know, audacious once, and we sorted all of the Legos by piece, like, what kind they were,
Ooh, that
and we
is
had
clever.
them all organized. And then they were ruined, and I was like, "Never again. I'll
Mm-mm.
never invest my life, at least while my kids are little, into that again."
Yeah, we have, organizers of I mean, I have them like the dip because we have like the Duplo, we have like the building blocks for my daughter, and then like the boys have totes and totes and totes and totes and totes and totes and totes of Legos. Because they're my mother-in-law would go to yard sales and she's like, "I bought this trash bag full of Legos. Look at everything we got. You
Dude,
know how
that's
good it
a
is?"
good deal.
Yeah. And I'm like, "All right, bring it in." And
People
now I'm
sell their
like,
Legos by the pound now.
"We
It's like
probably could.
20 bucks a pound.
We
That's what
probably could."
my, stepsister did. She, um her boys, like, became teenagers, and she's like, "I'm gonna sell Legos," and she sold them off pound by pound.
Mm,
And I
I
was
don't
like, I think I'll keep my
yeah,
Legos.
I also have my own Lego sets. I mean, hello. Dee, 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 dee. All right, well, we've
Go
talk
build
showed it
Lego.
long enough.
Thanks for coming to our talk show.
TED Talk, Meg
Thanks for
Talk.
coming Thanks for coming to our Black Talk, blah, blah.
Um, real quick, just if you're still listening and you live in Los Angeles and you know any tattoo artists that aren't gonna give us hepatitis, please let us know because
We don't want hepatitis.
and I need a tattoo of a podcast mic while I'm in LA. So
LA. Or if you're a tattoo artist in
yeah, for
LA,
sure. If let us know, because I
we want to give you money.
yeah, we'll give you money, and you'll see how weird I am in person.
When she doesn't talk to you. When you're just like, "Hello. Thank you."
Hi, thanks. Unless I've been drinking, that's like I got to do something. The anxiety meds aren't cutting it right now. All right, guys, have a good week.
Bye.